Hey everybody, it's Tiqqle, and in this video I'm going over the Elemental Shaman PvP guide for 8.1. The patch has come out pretty recently, and I feel pretty confident with what I have to share with you guys for the rotations, the builds, everything about it. I'm going to go through it right now, and here's the plan. And let's not forget, guys, this guide is on Icy Veins. Look in the description below. It should be uploaded very, very soon after posting this video. Shout out to Icy Veins. It's a great resource. You guys should be going there for your PvE and now your PvP information. This will be in a detailed write-up. Look there in the description for the link. There'll be a heavy amount of detail in writing there in case the video is a little much. Now let's get into it. So for this PvP guide, we're going over the Azerite traits, the stat priorities, the talent builds that I have, which I have 2, and then how to do damage in those burst windows, as well as sustained damage. How do we do sustained damage? Moving to Azerite traits first. For the outer ring, you're still focusing on getting 3 lava shock traits. This huge burst is what's going to cause kills in arena and even in battlegrounds. Now, this is really important to get 3 of them because each one will provide around 6 to 8k damage to your Earth Shock that you're going to be focusing on maximizing its damage. And we'll get into a little bit how to do that in the burst section. But here it's very important to maximize that first hit because that's really what's going to chunk your enemy. Now, the other options here, if you can't get the 3 lava shocks, you can go Igneous Potential. That may help some of your padding damage through your lava burst, but you're not going to kill anyone with a lava burst at this point in time. I know that makes a lot of people sad. Now, Laser Matrix is a good damaging ability if you have those traits available to you. Again, this would be more for padding. Lava Shock is really the bursting one, but it is a backup in case you don't have those. Natural Harmony is something that gives you secondary stats. Now, I actually am not a huge fan of this one just because the secondary stats aren't making a huge dent in our cast times and you can't really feel the difference, but it's a backup again. Now, Igneous Potential, just to go back to that, I actually think this is very fun to use, specifically in battlegrounds, in rated battlegrounds. Throwing in 1, it increases the chance for Lava Surge up to 18% for LA, which is good, up from 15. Now, to be honest, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it's helpful and it helps smooth out the gameplay, giving you more procs, and that will weave into Master of the Elements. We'll get into that later. Now, I would recommend you try to go 3 Igneous Potentials if you want to just have a fun battleground experience, because it will maximize the damage of that lava burst, which we all know and love. We love meatballs. So try it out, but the play really is Lava Shock for that outer ring. For the middle ring, now the stat priorities, we haven't gotten into the yet, but it's really about crit and haste. Now, number 1, Unstable Flames. This is a stacking crit middle trait. It gives you more crit, and that's going to help us in our burst, making those crits huge, especially with Sky Fury and the other multipliers, which we'll get into later. Now, Overwhelming Power is going to give you a lot of haste. This is going to help generate Maelstrom. This is going to help smoothen out gameplay, and I actually really enjoy this trait, at least having 1 of them. Now, Blessed Portents. This is something that is, I think, a good support trait to take. It's not too bad, especially because these are all kind of supportive traits in the middle anyway, giving you secondary stats, etc. As a LA Shaman, your healing is very, very strong for side healing. So this could be very helpful for your teammates, and especially if you're going against teams that are going for your healer or your boomkin, as we all experience right now. Now, for the inner traits, you really want to go things that give you beefiness or give you healing. And right now, because of the Azerite fortification being removed, those only options are really Resounding Protection, which every 30 seconds gives you an absorption shield, or Impassive Visage, which heals you whenever you're hit. And now most things have dots, so Impassive Visage is actually pretty useful, especially because people are usually being hit the entire arena game in some way, shape, or form. So I think these are really the only 2 viable options right now. Pack Spirit is too defensive. The movement speed one isn't potent enough, so that's kind of my recommendations. Now, this is the Azerite traits. Now, for stat priorities, you need to be maximizing your critical strike. You need to be taking deadly navigation for your weapon enchant and even enchanting. Now, I think versatility is important because you don't want to die, but the reality is those crits, you have to land crits or else you won't get kills. And when you crit, your jaw will drop because Earth Shock has so many multipliers on it that it still does significant amount of damage, even though it was recently nerfed through its Lava Shock Azerite trait. Now, the other point here is, haste does reduce global cooldowns. It does increase the tick rate on Flame Shock, but in reality, the crit is where we're going to win, because we are also in our burst window. When we get there, you'll see most, if not all, the things that we're using are instant casts, which means that is not really affected by haste at all. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but crit is your friend. Stack it up. Next, into the talent builds, there are really two builds that you can go. One is focusing on Surge of Power and maximizing your burst window through that. The next is Ice Fury, which will provide a significant amount of sustained damage over a longer period of time, especially with Maelstrom generation that it gives. You can be earth shocking very often. For the Surge of Power build, you want to be taking Echo of Elements to give yourself 2 Lava Bursts in case you need to cast. You want to be casting Lava Burst, which generates some of the most Maelstrom you can get other than Ice Fury. And for this, you then also want to take either Call the Thunder or Totem Mastery. Why these two? So Call the Thunder is good because it reduces the Maelstrom cost of Earthshock, which is used for Surge of Power. Reduces that by 10. So in your burst window, you need to have 2 Earthshocks available. That reduces the need to have 120 Maelstrom to be 100 Maelstrom for that burst window, which means that we can do it more often. And it means that if we're generating Maelstrom through our burst, we may be able to even get another Earthshock at the end of the burst for even more damage. So that's why this is a very good idea. Totem Mastery itself actually is probably statistically more damage because it's generating Maelstrom, it's giving you more damage, and it's increasing the number of times you overload in general. But I prefer Call the Thunder because of the kind of quickness of getting that burst window available based on, Maelstrom generation. Now for the next tier, I do take Spirit Wolf in some cases, but I mostly take Earth Shield because Earth Shield provides healing and utility when you don't have to cast for it. You can put it on a target, put it on your friendly Boomkin or healer, and that will provide healing for them even when you're not casting on them at all. And if you do have to cast on them, it'll increase the healing they receive from you by 10%. So it is a very good cooldown to use, and my preferred one on this tier. Now the next one for the 60 tier is Master of the Elements. Master of the Elements, increasing damage of your next nature, frost, or physical ability. Physical, by the way, is Earthquake, in case Sid asks, by 20%. So after you Lava Burst, and now we have 2 of them with Echo, now we get plus 20% damage for the next casted ability. This is very important because this is a multiplier you will be using in your burst, and it is just overall going to be available and used on all of your abilities as you're kind of weaving Lava Bursts in and out. So you need to keep this in mind. Next is Nature's Guardian. It just keeps you alive very passively. It's like an oh no button that you don't even have to press, which gives you a surge of heals if your health gets below a certain percentage. Now, Surge of Power is a very unique ability. It's a new talent as of 8.1. It has special effects if you use Earthshock, and then the next ability you use will do special effects. Now, for bursting, you want to be lightning bolting afterwards using your Stormkeeper lightning bolt, but otherwise, well, what else does it do? Well, if I flame shock after I Earthshock, it can spread 2 flame shocks if they're within a certain yardage of each other. If I use Lava Burst after I Earthshock, it reduces the cooldown on my Flame Ellie, which, by the way, still generates a ton of Maelstrom. And if I Frost Shock after Earthshocking, this will root the target. So that is actually very, sometimes is a great utility to use when going against double melee in arena or even in 2v2 bracket. Now the last ability I'm taking here is Stormkeeper. Stormkeeper actually received a huge buff in 8.1. It now has changed so that it's lightning bolts, 2 of them, after you Stormkeeper will do plus 150% damage to the target. Now this is important to call out because this impacts all of the overloaded lightning bolts, meaning that if I'm hitting for plus 150% on my main lightning bolt, everything that overloads based on that will get that 150% increased damage. That means the lightning bolts after I Earthshock, my 1 to 3 based on Surge of Power, will be plus 150% damage. That is a huge burst, and especially if I get plus 3, because Stormkeeper by itself forces and ensures that you get at least one overload. So this is the build. Now for the PvP talents, Lightning Lasso is an ability that just got a buff as well. It does 48% of the target's damage in a 6-second stun, which cannot be dispelled. They have to interrupt you, knock you back, or CC you to stop the channel. Now this is a very, very strong ability right now. I definitely recommend you take it no matter what. Now Sky Fury is also a great ability, increasing your crit damage, basically increasing your burst if you're getting crits. That's why crits so important. And Grounding Totem, now Grounding Totem you can switch out for a lot of different things, but Grounding is usually what you would want to take depending on your opponent, depending on their CC, depending on their castable abilities. For the Ice Fury build, the PvP talents are exactly the same. Now what's different is because we are selecting Ice Fury on that 90 row, what it means is we have a lot more globals to use. Ice Fury in itself is a castable ability, then it's going to give you 4 Frost Shocks that will all need to be cast. Because of that, and because of the recent change to Flame Shock making it last 24 seconds, it's not worth having Echo of the Elements because you're going to have too many globals. You're probably going to have proccing Lava Bursts between your Frost Shocks, which is great because it uses Master of the Elements, but in reality, you're never going to be able to use all of those globals. So what is better instead is to use to get the passive benefit of Earthen Rage. Earthen Rage, which will do passive damage hitting the targets that you hit last for a certain amount of damage over a certain, I think is over 6 seconds. So because of that, and because of Ice Fury giving you basically 4 things to do after you cast it, it is definitely something that's going to increase your overall damage. Now, Ice Fury generates so much Maelstrom, the Frost Ice Fury generates so much Maelstrom, you're going to have to be dumping Earth Shocks, and this is a high consistent damage build and a huge Maelstrom generation build. Also to note is when you have those Frost Shocks, which give you 8 Maelstrom a hit, those will also be able to use on the move, so you're going to be very mobile. I recommend this build for Battlegrounds, and I think it's a very smooth thing to do in maybe even in Arena when you're going against teams that you know you're going to have to out-dampen them. It's going to be a long game. You're not going to be able to get a burst opportunity, like potentially against an Arsham S-Priest, where you may not be able to one-shot them depending on your teammate. So that's what I recommend here. But otherwise, the use of Totem Mastery and Earthen Rage shows a very passive playstyle where you're going to be doing overall more damage, but it's going to be not using that Surge of Power burst window. Now we'll go into the burst damage, but before we get into this build-specific burst damage, I want to call out something that I think is very important for every caster or someone that's trying to pick up caster to understand about bursting as a caster. Now, specifically to Ellie, it's not necessarily the case always because of how many instant casts we have, but it's very important to understand how you can burst even by using 2 abilities together. So I'll use this as an example. If I have enough Maelstrom to Earth Shock, and I want to Earth Shock after I Lightning Bolt, here's what I would do. I don't want to Lightning Bolt and then just wait a second, then Earth Shock. What I want to be doing is I want to be casting that Lightning Bolt, and then I want to know and I want to think of, okay, what's the instant cast I want to use at the end of that cast? Because a 1.7 second cast, by the time that 1.2 second cast is complete, the global cooldown will be over, and as that damage is about to land, I should be able to hit an instant cast ability so that both of that damage hits together. Because if you're just spreading out and you're just casting and casting to casting, you know, abilities over and over and over, it might not provide the amount of pressure that you're looking for, and that's because you're not forcing damage at the same exact time. Spread pressure is very easy to heal through as a healer. You're expecting spread pressure because if you think about it, a healer is also just casting and casting and casting. What you need to be able to do is find windows of opportunity where you can cast into an instant cast. For example, here, I would start casting a Lightning Bolt, wouldn't do any damage until the end of the cast, and at that same exact time, I would press Earth Shock. And that would do the Lightning Bolt damage and the Earth Shock at the same exact time. And now this is something I definitely practice on all my caster DPS, and I'm actually starting to pick up on healers now. Healing with a full duration cast, and then at the end using an instant cast. Combining these abilities together gives you spikes of damage or healing, and that's how you get wins, and that's how you build pressure. So just wanted to hit on this like I did in my Legion guide. Alright, going into the first maximum burst, which is using Surge of Power. This will be the highest potential burst you can possibly do. First, you need to be using Fire Elemental, if you have it, Sky Fury, and then you need to pre-cast Stormkeeper so that those lightning bolts are prepped and ready to go. Now you also need to be having pretty much 80 Maelstrom at this point if you're using Call of the Thunder, and 20 stacks of Lava Shock to maximize that Earth Shock damage. Next, you need to lead with a Lava Burst. That should be your first global cooldown, doing about 8k damage. And this is going to use and activate Master of the Elements, which will increase your next ability, which will be a Earth Shock, by 20%, which is a pretty big deal given that this can crit for so hard. Next, after Earth Shock, because you are Surge of Power, you want to use your third global cooldown, which is going to use one of your Lightning Bolts empowered by Stormkeeper to Lightning Bolt. This can do, we know it will do the Lightning Bolt itself in one overload because that's how Stormkeeper is defined, and then it will do 1 to 3 Surge of Power overloaded Lightning Bolts, which will do a lot of significant additional damage depending on how many the RNG gods bless you with. And then what you want to do is you don't want to, I know statistically using a Lava Burst here would maximize the Earth Shock, but it's not worth it for the GCD, so I make note of that. And then what you want to do is you want to Earth Shock into your last Lightning Bolt empowered by Stormkeeper. Stormkeeper will make that first Lightning Bolt and 1 overload strong, and then Surge of Power will make the next 1 to 3 empowered. And then after that, you want to throw in your Lightning Lasso, which will do about 45k damage and be your 6th global cooldown, and that is the max burst you can do as an elemental shaman, and really walks you through button by button what you have to press to win the game, because this is a ridiculous amount of potential damage. I'm not going to sum up the math because I don't want Blizzard to know either, but this is the math that we're talking about that could be the burst. This is the power of Surge of Power. Another way to do this is what I like to call this sneak attack, making sure you have 80 Maelstrom with Call of Thunder trait, having 20 stacks of Lava Shock, prepping using Stormkeeper and Sky Fury, getting that starting Lava Burst, but then starting with the lasso, starting with that hard CC on the target, because at the end of the lasso, you'll be able to instant cast. Like I said earlier, you'll be able to do that because the GCD will be up, meaning that at the end of the lasso, you will be able to hit them with Urshock before they can press any buttons, which is the most damage that you can possibly do in a one global window. So that is pretty great. And then from there, you can cast your next global, can be your first Surge of Power, Lightning Bolt, and then repeating it again for that. So this is an alternative order of abilities. I recommend trying both out, see what you like the most, see what circumstance you like the most, and leave me a note in the comment, guys, which way you're using this ability. I definitely want to know what you guys think. Now, guys, this is the Surge of Power burst. We have everything that we need. We have 20 stacks of Lava Shock. We have our Maelstrom generated. We have a lasso up. We have Sky Fury, we have our pet, we have everything. We have our full potential possible, so let's clear our recount here, and now we're pretty much ready to go. So let's go ahead and do everything that we said, right? Fire Elementals out. We're going to pre-cast Stormkeeper, drop Sky Fury. We're going to use Lava Burst. We're going to use Urshock. We're going to use Lightning Bolt. We're going to use Urshock. We're going to use Lightning Bolt, and then we're going to lasso. Now, I did it a little bit slow, but I'm pressing each thing individually to make sure that you can see what's happening. Now, that was a lot of damage. Now, obviously, these targets are probably different than if you're PvPing, but that's what it feels like, and that's what it looks like. All right, guys, let's do it one more time. Looking in the top left, you can see all the buttons that I'm going to press. So you can see my Maelstrom's pretty much way over where it needs to be, but that's fine. How are we going to prep this? Sky Fury. We're going to press Stormkeeper. We're going to Lava Burst first to Urshock to Lightning Bolt, to Urshock, to Lightning Bolt. And then we have enough Maelstrom left. I could do other things too, but I really want to end it in lasso and lassoing down the target and then making sure that they are not stunned on stun DR, diminishing return, because then the full cast of the lasso will be a lot less. But that's pretty much the burst that you were going to be going. Now, the Ice Fury build is a little bit different. The conditions are the same and the prep is the same. 80 Maelstrom and around 20 stacks for Lava Shock to maximize that. But because you have Ice Fury, you don't want to weave in Urshocks. You want to be bursting with first using that Lava Burst, then using Urshock to maximize that big single Urshock, maximizing that as much as you can. Then you need to be using Lava Bursts before your Stormkeeper, because each time you Lava Burst, you'll be increasing your Stormkeeper damage by 20%. Yeah, I know. Then you end with Lasso. But I know what you're thinking. This has nothing to do with Ice Fury. Yeah, well, that's because Ice Fury itself does not do a ton of damage, and the Frost Shocks don't do a ton of damage comboed together. So this is really, the Ice Fury play is really something for consistent damage and fluidity of play. Now, it does generate a lot of Maelstrom, so you'll be able to get consistent damage through Urshocks, Lava Burst, Frost Shocks, all that together. But in terms of burst, this has less burst, but it's still there, and I recommend taking it for Battlegrounds. All right, guys, while I'm kind of getting my Lava Shock stacks up, let's go ahead and show you the damage for Ice Fury. Ice Fury is the cast, right? You're going to go ahead and cast it off, and it did some actually okay damage. 10k is not that great for a crit. But what we have now is these Frost Shocks that we're able to use instant cast for 10k, which is actually not bad. And that's also generating Maelstrom as well. So that's what Ice Fury is. And that's why, each global is its own cast, why it's not great for the burst. But for the burst itself, we'll give you a quick rundown of how it's going to go. Now, remember, we don't use Urshocks before the Stormkeeper Lightning Bolts. Now we need to be using Lava Burst. So what's this really contingent on? Really important that we get a proc for Lava Burst along the way, otherwise we're in kind of trouble. So let's go ahead and use Sky Fury. We're going to use Stormkeeper. We're going to use Lava Burst, Urshock for the big Urshock, and then we're going to use Lava Burst into Lightning Bolt, and then hope we get a proc, because then we need to Lava Burst into another Lightning Bolt, and that's where you're going to get the big damage. But again, we're not going to get those several additional smaller overloads, but that's okay. That's not what this build is about. But there's definitely, there's definitely still burst here, but it's not kind of an RNG random burst. Oh yeah, and then we can lasso after that. Lasso being available every 30 seconds is very often, so you definitely want to be including that in the end of that burst chain. Now, I do think it's worth noting, how do you sustain damage? How do you build pressure even without your burst? Well, I think what's most important is to call out that Flame Shock has been changed a little bit to last 24 seconds.